Now, Wong Kar-wai, for my money, is one of the most exciting filmmakers that has come out since I've personally been making films.
即導演洪家衞咧睇中我，叫我去試下，我未拍過戲啊。
佢自己嗰套就係永遠都唔話俾你聽嗰個古仔係咩咯，即係佢會等你自己去發現你個角色係咩，同埋你去發現個故事係咩。佢從來都唔俾劇本我哋睇，即係可能佢嗰個諗法係唔想我哋有咁多準備，咁多啲嘢去到現場去 feel 你個 character 同埋 feel 嗰場戲，所以我覺得呢樣我係同其他導演好唔一樣。
I think in Wong's films, characters always are yearning for so many things. And oftentimes I feel like those things aren't attainable if those characters choose to go after them.
His films have an excitement that, all the Hong Kong films kind of have a majority of excitement about them that's different from American films, but his are a little different. It's more like a Godardian influence to them, which is not the way most of the John Woo, Jackie Chan style of films are. So it makes them very, very different. I find his work very charging.
My first film, As Tears Go By, is quite successful critically and commercially. And my second film is not so good in box office because they expect something like a standard martial art movies. When I was making Chungking Express and Foreign Angels, they said, well, this guy making film very fast. When I was making Days of Being Wild, people said, well, he makes slow films.
Your films, people say, are about romance and relationships, and that you are fascinated by character, not story.
Well, for me, it's always come from the characters first. Because stories is more or less, to me, is always more or less the same thing, but like a love story, you can tell it in a different way. Like for me, In the Mood for Love is a love story because it involves two persons. And In the Mood for Love is a story about love because it's about one person. And it is the aftertaste of love.
I think I would consider myself influenced by the East traditions more than the West. Maybe my films looks more westernized than other Chinese cinemas. Chinese filmmakers, but I think in the heart it is quite Eastern thinking. I'm very aware of time because it's gone and it won't come back. That is very Eastern.
So how did you sort of plot and make your way into directing? Because the Hong Kong film industry wasn't known for personal films. The films were being cranked out, kind of generic films. And you started you wrote for a number of years before you directed As Tears Go By.
Actually, I was studying graphic design and in Hong Kong Polytechnics. And I don't know why, because actually I have no talents in drawing. But I can take good pictures. So they said, well, you come to be our students. And at that time, this is the beginning of the so-called Hong Kong New Wave, because we went into the television's era. At that point, there's a lot of very important directors like Choi Hak, Patrick Thames, and An Hui. They study cinemas in England or in America, and they come back to Hong Kong to work in television stations, and it became like a very trendy business. So I quit being a graphic design student and joined the television stations, and from there I meet a lot directors and writers, and 1 year later, a lot of people leave because that's, I think, the beginning of the Hong Kong new wave in the film industry. So they need a lot of new writers and assistant directors. So I I become a writer. When I become a director, I think, well, he's my model. I think I can do something like this. But I realize I'm not, because I'm still, the night before shooting, I'm still working on the script because I keep changing it. And I said, well, I wake up in the morning and I have 2 hours, I can do all these short lists. And then I wake up like half an hour before the shoot. So I go to, it's total panic. And then because I learned some tricks before as a writer, because as a writer, you have to be on set all the time in Hong Kong. It's because you are the psychiatrist of a director. So you learn some tricks. And so I said, well, this shot is going to be very complicated. I want to see the action. So we are going to make a long track. It's almost as long as here. And so we just follow these two guys jumping around all these tables, so set up the shots. So they will have, because it is going to be a big setup, so it will take at least 3 hours so I can have time. and I still remember like the DP of As Tears Go By actually is Andrew Lau, who later on become a very successful director, who made films like Internal Affairs. And I still remember Andrew is, at that point, is very, very young and very energetic. And we are basically very like primitive to shot this shot, because normally people will have a lot. If you are following these actions with a dolly, people will have a lot of like cushions at the end, because the camera will just hit the wall like this. But we don't have this kind of thing because I didn't tell them the night before. So actually we line up few other like stuntmen over there. So the cameras go like this and then So they would run into all the stuntmen and start over again. But in those days, it's really fun. It's because we are all very, very young, and we feel like, well, we're doing something very amazing.
Nowadays, music plays a role in us, because the music is not controlled by us. We go to a restaurant, we hear some music. When the music is popular, you can hear the music everywhere. So the music brings you certain impressions. Well, it's not only music from my previous film, it's also we use music from other directors' film, like the music of Truffaut, Fassbinder's, because to me the film of Truffaut is like the Song of Nagingo. It reminds you of a certain period of time. So it is a time's reference.
Here's what you said, too, on filmmaking. Making movies is like loving a very dangerous woman. You have to serve her, make her happy, and care for her, or she'll leave you. Mm-hmm. Meaning, if you don't pay attention to your movie, it won't be what you want it to be.
Yes,
it'll be something else.
And also you have to wait for her.
Wait for her.
Yes, because like people ask me, why you need 5 years to make this film? Yeah. But there's so many reasons, because we produced the film by ourselves, and during these 5 years, a lot of things happened.
SARS, for one.
Yes. So we have to stop the productions, and then we have to wait for all these actors and actresses. So if a film is like a woman, then to make it simple, is you're attracted by this film, you're attracted by this woman, and you have to wait for her. You have to wait for the right moment for the film, or for a shot, or for emotions, and also for very practical reasons. You have to wait for the locations. There's a lot of things, and I think for directors, it's very important that you have patience.
We have the idea of this film around 1997, because it's during the handover. And because at that moment, the Chinese government promised Hong Kong 50 years and change. So 246 actually is the last years of this promise. And I think it would be interesting to use these numbers to make a film about promises. So at the very beginning, the film is intended to make it like an opera. So we have 3 short stories in the film based on a Western opera, and we have each story we have two actors and actresses in the film. So it's a huge cast. So by the time we get all this finance and the production, it's already the end of 1999. And at the same time, we are working on the film In the Mood for Love. At first, these 2 films is 2 different projects. But somehow, because of the schedule, we have to start at the same times in Bangkok. And we think In the Mood for Love is a relatively more easy film. And it will be like, because we have only two actors in the film, and it's a very simple story, it will take like 2 or 3 months, and then we can start on the film, 2046 again. But somehow In the Mood for Love takes much longer than we expected. So we have to delay the film, delay the production of 2046. But because of the cast, each of them are very busy, so we have to work out the schedule again. And so, but we also have other problems, like at first we want to shoot the film in Shanghai, but we need to wait for the permits. And by the time when we get the permits, we build the set and the cast is ready, we have the problem of SARS. So we have to release the productions and to gather these people months later. And during this few years, actually, the relationship between In the Mood for Love and 246 becomes much closer. Because for me, In the Mood for Love is a love story. It's about 2 persons. And the man, the writers in the film, is a family man. He believes in commitment, in marriage. He works hard. He stays at home. And but afterwards, when he goes through all the things with Maggie and all this, his miserable days in Singapore, he comes back to Hong Kong. He goes to another extreme. Now he's not married. He don't believe in commitment. He becomes a cynical person, and he prefers to stay in hotel rooms instead of to find a place to settle down. And in the Mood for Love, it is a relationship about just 2 persons. Even though we don't see any physical contact between these 2 persons, but we can feel that the love is growing. But in this film, 246, to me, is more like a story about this writer. It's a story about love, what love means to him. In this film, Maggie is not a person, it's an image, an ideal woman in his memory. So he always compares this woman with all the women that he came across in his life. And he tried to go into some relationship which is very physical. He wants to experience that emotion again. He would try to find the love that he wants. But even though it's very physical, but at the end, he realized it's not what he wants. And so these 2 films is 2 different approaches, and at certain point it's a mirror to each other. Or we put it that way, if the audience haven't seen In the Mood for Love before, they should watch 246 first. And if they want to know what happened between Maggie and Tony, they should watch In the Mood for Love later. It's like the missing chapter of these novels.
On the first day of shootings, we work in a very small tea house. The only way we can do is to shoot with a wide-angle lens. But I think we should do something more interesting. So I asked Chris to we have extremely wide angle lens. He said, yes. But in that case, the face of Michelle looks like a banana.
It was about space. We use a wide angle because these people are so close together but so distant, and the camera should be close to them, therefore you feel very close to them, but you know that they're really separated by a great distance of, incomprehensibility. They can't talk to each other. That's after the fact. I mean, the real fact is, it was a small space and we had to get close, right? And then you start going in that direction and you say, hey, it's working, this is interesting. And then you try and put on another lens and you say, shit, I mean, anything else doesn't work. When you shoot a gun, the cameraman, if it's me, he usually goes, oh! So I think this is partly how the handheld style that we've developed together started. N'est-ce pas?
Talk like a film critic.
Yes, I've been reading Tony Raines all week.
This film, I think, it's been a long time. There's not such a kung fu film like what we saw in the 70s, the Shaw Brothers. Very hardcore, very authentic. There's no flying, there's no fancy move. Everything is very precise, and it's hardcore. We need writings in making of movies, but the thing is, you have to think in terms of a visual. That's why we spend so much time on the road to doing interview with different masters from different school. It's not just talking. Actually, I have to get them to do demonstrations, and when they show you the demonstration, you just look at the move. You understand the move, what is the mechanisms of the body, and how to make this kick, and how to do this fight. And then it's in your mind already, because you already have the shot, have the setup, you know how to, because I don't practice martial art, even though I've watched thousands of martial art films, but it's a different thing. You have to actually to feel it. And every time I do an interview with the masters, I always say, well, I want to see how hard that punch goes. And like in some of this Chinese school, they are not talking about force. They are talking about the power. So it doesn't seem very strong, but somehow it hurts a lot. So you have to feel that. Post-productions means in front of you there are so many options. There's so many ways to tell the stories, and so you're trying to find the best, because when you're shooting a film, sometimes you want to see more, but when you're doing the post-productions, you are aware that there's a running time. And some people said, well, I don't care, I want to make this film 3 hours long, then it should be 3 hours long. Right. But sometimes you have some restrictions about running times. So you have to find the most efficient way to tell the story in a certain running times. Chungking Express or Happy Together, I don't have to do any much research because the story is contemporary. But if you have to make a film like The Grandmaster, you have to understand the world, because you can never understand the story of a man without knowing the time he went through, in the background of his family, and the martial art movement at that time.
So did you approach something like 2046 that way as well?
No, 2046 is more like a fantasy. It's about a writer in the 60s, which I know many of them, because it's something people that I know from my childhood, and the futuristic part of it is basically a very low-tech futuristic vision from the 60s, you know. I intended to make it like that because it's the imagination of a writer in the 60s, not today.
The reason you want to work with this actress or you are attracted to these persons because there's certain personalities and there's certain qualities that attracts you. So the first thing that for an actress is it inspires imaginations. The face can, well, you can imagine a story with this face and with this look. So then you can create the characters out of that. And I have no interest to like to create an idea and then to ask someone to fit in this. It is not my method.